Well, good day, my friends. It's your old pal Jordan the Lion. How are you all doing today? I hope you said great. Today we are near White Plains, New York, and we are at Ferncliff Cemetery to visit one of the most versatile actors that ever lived. This guy could do every style and do it well. He could hold his own against Errol Flynn. He could be in the greatest horror movies with Vincent Price, and was even the greatest Sherlock Holmes we've ever seen. Today we're going to visit the grave of the great Basil Rathbone. Daze with Jordan the Lion and you all. It begins right now. Basil's buried out here, well, he's interred out here in the mausoleum, and he really had one of the most amazing careers, one of the most beloved people in the entire industry, because he really did it all in life and in acting. All right, I believe that as soon as you enter, he's down this first hall. So we entered down here, and this is Unit 1 is what it's called. And you come to the second section, and he's all the way at the very, very top. See up at the very top, there he is. There's his wife, Ouida Rathbone, Basil Rathbone up there, 1892 to 1967. This guy had an amazing life. He was born in South Africa, Johannesburg. His mother was a violinist and his father was a miner, but his father got accused of being a spy. And so the family fled when Basil, and that wasn't even actually his birth name, but that's the name that it was Basil Rathbone, but he was actually born Philip St. John Basil Rathbone. And growing up, he was a great athlete. He had a couple of brothers, and his father was pretty strict on him. So he made sure that they were going to grow up to be something. So when he got out of high school, the family was actually they had moved to England when he was 3. So he grew up there and actually in the Liverpool area. So when he got out of school, he got a job as an insurance salesman, and then decided, he had always loved acting in plays and things when he was younger in school, and so he decided that he was going to try his hand at that kind of life. So he got involved in the theater, and for 5 years, he would learn the ropes. He would play just about every kind of role you could, and then started actually getting good roles, and ended up getting in a production that he first was in Taming of the Shrew. That was the very first thing he was ever in. He was in several productions of Romeo and Juliet, so he did a lot of Shakespeare, but he eventually got on a touring company that came to the United States, and he started touring in the United States, but unfortunately World War I broke out, and so he was called to service. And while he was in service, his brother also went, and his brother was killed in action, and it just completely changed how Basil thought. Apparently his entire outlook on life changed. He just signed up for every high-risk mission there was for the military and ended up advancing to the rank of captain. He even dressed up, did like an espionage type thing where he went and hid out to learn secrets and dressed up just like in the movies, like as a tree, so he could blend in with full camouflage with sticks and everything, and was awarded one of the highest honors and one of the highest medals that you could receive for his acts of bravery during the war. Also, he was a 2-time fencing champion in the military as well, so that helped him when he came back out, went back into acting. He now was a top-notch fencer and could do any kind of swashbuckling plays or anything that there was, but he ended up getting an opportunity to go to Hollywood. Now, his film career actually started in the 1920s, but it wouldn't be until the 30s to where he would be one of the biggest names in movies. And a lot of that would be because he would end up taking on one of the most famous characters in books that there ever was, and gave probably the best version of it that we ever saw. So he started his career in the silent pictures, doing School for Scandal and The Masked Bride, but he eventually worked his way into making movies like David Copperfield, Anna Karenina, The Last Days of Pompeii, and then he got cast in The Adventures of Robin Hood, playing opposite Errol Flynn, and he was basically the bad guy of the movie, and he was so charismatic, so creepy, that people then started to take note that this guy could do everything. He was slender, had sharp features, he was good looking, he had great diction, he carried himself well, he spoke well, he could pretty much do everything. And then when it came to acting, he could be in dramas, he could be in comedies, he could be an action star. And so the perfect role came about when they were looking for a new Sherlock Holmes, and Basil Rathbone ended up taking the part, creating a whole depth to Sherlock Holmes, even beyond the books, something that people could really relate to. And it was so popular that Basil Rathbone ended up making 14 of the movies portraying Sherlock Holmes. He also would end up doing a radio show portraying Sherlock Holmes. And sadly, because he was so good at this and he wanted to do so much, it kind of pigeonholed him. He was starting to be seen for a short time as maybe all he could do was be a Sherlock Holmes. But he definitely was able to break through that, because some of my favorite movies, he ended up doing so many films throughout his career. He was acting all the way up into the 60s, which is crazy because I ended up following him kind of like backwards. I found him through AIP Pictures movies that he and Vincent Price and Peter Lorre and Boris Karloff were all making together, like Tales of Terror and Comedy of Terrors. Those were right at the end of his life, like 64, 65, and he ended up passing in 67. And those were some of the most fun times he had, because he and Vincent Price and all those guys, they had very similar interests. They all kind of came from the same background as far as how they got into movies, the kind of parts they'd played, and then what they ended up doing later, which was like the horror stuff. So they all had a great appreciation for Europe and art and kind of the finer things. So Vincent Price would say in interviews that when we made those movies, it was really just an excuse to go on a vacation together. He said we would all go make these movies, and we didn't expect them to be blockbusters. They were AIP Pictures. AIP would go film in England because it was cheaper to film there back in those days. But they said they would all be in these movies. It would be a draw to the fans and to the distributors. But they said for us, it was just an excuse for like a fun vacation together. Now, there's an interesting rumor or an interesting theory that Basil Rathbone, it was said, was actually who Margaret Mitchell wrote Rhett Butler for in Gone with the Wind. And apparently, I've heard other things where people said that she told Clark Gable, I wrote it for you. A lot of places say that, the studio was dead set on having Clark Gable because he was a big box office name. He had won an Academy Award already. But it was said that he wanted that part. Basil Rathbone wanted that part very bad and tried very hard to get it. But in the end, it was Clark Gable, who we know as Rhett Butler. And I think they both would have done an amazing job, but I think, Clark Gable is Clark Gable. It's hard to think of, the performance he gave there and trying to replace him with anybody else. For everything that Basil did, he was very good at jumping media. Whenever there was a new media, he started on stage, which he said was his true love, and that's what he wanted people really to remember him for, was all the great things that he did on stage. But he was also, once radio was a big thing, he did radio, television, movies. He really did everything that came along. But it was crazy because back in his acting days, he actually was arrested during a performance along with the entire cast. It was back in 1926, and it was in San Francisco, and they were doing a play called The Captive. And in the play, the man who Basil was portraying, his wife leaves him for another woman. And so they were all arrested. The charges were eventually dropped, but Basil Rathbone was just completely disgusted by this. He said to him, he didn't see anything, wrong with the play or what was in the play, and he thought that this was even further proof that homosexuality should be more in the open for people not to react this way. In 1948, Basil Rathbone won a Tony Award, and I guess that year was actually shared amongst two other men, so it was a three-way tie. He won a Tony Award for Best Actor in a Play. Then in 1954, he was in the musical version made for TV, Christmas Carol with Freddie March. He was playing Jacob Marley, and then eventually went on to do another television movie called The Stingiest Man in Town, where he would play Ebenezer Scrooge. So in the 1960s, he decided to tour a one-man show, and it was called In and Out of Character. He recited poetry, he would do Shakespeare, he would tell stories from his life, including one of the stories where he would talk about fencing Errol Flynn in the movies, and he would say, I could have killed him anytime I wanted to. I thought that was hilarious. He would also recite the famous 221B poem that was it was kind of a staple for the Baker Street Irregulars, which was like the big Sherlock Holmes fan club. So he would go out and give everybody a little bit of what they wanted. If you liked his dramatic stuff, he'd give you a little of that. He basically would go out and give an autobiography in person, which I thought was pretty cool. Basil Rathbone has 3 stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and he was legendary when it came to the party scene. He's buried here with his second wife, Ouida, who they apparently were just an amazing couple. She was a writer, and so once they got together, they did everything together. They would help each other's career in every way possible. They were just really a perfect couple, and so they would host a lot of people and a lot of gatherings out at their house, and so their house was kind of known as a legendary party house. Rest in peace, Basil Rathbone. Thank you for all of the amazing inspiration, the amazing art that you put out there. Unfortunately, he died in 1967 abruptly. He had a heart attack while living in New York City, and that was the end of Sherlock Holmes. If you've never been to 221B Baker Street, you definitely should go. It's worth checking out. I remember being in London, just walking around, all of a sudden I look up and I'm like, wait, oh my gosh, that's a real place? There truly wasn't anything that he couldn't do as an actor. Every style, every role, he could interpret it, bring a backstory to it, bring something to the character that had never been seen before. I think we're really missing those kind of actors today. If you've never seen anything Basil Rathbone, you absolutely should go watch it, even if it's just the AIP stuff, which was done as comedy, kind of horror comedy stuff. I love that stuff. Comedy of Terrors. You can't go wrong with the Edgar Allan Poe based movies by AIP that they were in. Thank you all for watching. Rest in peace, Basil and Ouida Rathbone. We'll see you all next time from somewhere else. Have a great night and goodbye.